Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's another one of my Minecraft While I Read You, some completely unhinged Reddit stories videos, and today's lineup is a big one, 14 stories, so get comfortable, let me get some blocks going, and let's get into it. Alright, first story of the day is from the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? A guy's wife makes him a big plate of spaghetti one night and tells him to just try it, no questions, because she wanted to test something new. He digs in. It's actually good. He's enjoying himself. That is, until later when he finds out the something new was blending several days' worth of leftover pasta straight into the sauce so it wouldn't go to waste. Wait, what? And that's it. He's done. Can't finish the plate, tells her he's not okay with it. She gets defensive, feels like he's treating her attempt to cut down on food waste like some huge crime. So now he wants to know, is he the jerk for refusing to eat it once he found out, or is she the one in the wrong for not telling him what was actually in his food to begin with? Haha, man, I kind of see both sides on this one, honestly. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Okay, now, story number 2. Story 2 is also from the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? So this one's about a woman who legally changed her own first name and never told her husband she was doing it until it was already done. Growing up, she was named after her grandmother, someone she describes as cold and controlling for basically her whole childhood. And she says she'd hated sharing that name with her for years. A few months ago, she quietly started the legal process on her own, paid the fees, went down to the courthouse, the whole process, and only told her husband once the new driver's license actually showed up in the mail. He was blindsided. Every account, every document, every introduction to his co-workers for their entire marriage had her old name on it, and now he's finding out it's a completely different name, after the fact, with zero input from him. His argument is that it's not the name change itself, it's that she treated a decision affecting both of their lives like it was nobody's business but hers. Her argument is that it's her own name, her own history with her own grandmother, and she wasn't going to ask anyone's permission to stop being called something that made her skin crawl every time she heard it. Now his family's saying she blindsided him on purpose, and her side is saying he only cares because it's inconvenient for him, not because he actually understands why she needed to do it quietly. So is she the jerk for handling something this personal without a heads up, or is he the jerk for treating her own identity like something he gets a vote on? Man, okay. I don't think there's an easy answer on this one, honestly. Alright, let's get into story number 3. Story 3 is from the subreddit called True Off My Chest, and this one's a ride. The title is roughly, I'm being blackmailed for cheating on my wife. Okay, already, that's a hook. So here's the twist, and it's a good one. This guy gets a message out of nowhere from someone claiming they've got proof he's been cheating, demanding money to keep quiet about it. He panics for a second, until he actually looks at what they sent him. Turns out whoever's trying to blackmail him saw him out with a woman and assumed it was an affair, except that woman is his own wife. So this total stranger is threatening to expose an affair that isn't even happening, because they don't realize the other woman is literally his wife. He says he told her the whole thing and she hasn't stopped laughing about it since. Now he's deciding whether to just go to the police or mess with the blackmailer a little first. That's one of the best gotcha twists I've come across in a while. Alright, on to story number 4. Story 4, also from the subreddit called True Off My Chest. The title is I just need to tell someone, pretty vague on its own. Turns out the reason is genuinely one of the weirdest confessions I've come across in a while. So there's this guy whose next-door neighbor is borderline militant about his front yard garden gnomes. Perfectly lined up, dusted weekly, the whole deal. About a year and a half ago, this guy started sneaking over at night and quietly rearranging them into little scenes. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, just posed differently. At first it was small, just knocking a couple of them over like they'd had a rough night. Then it escalated. He started building actual little storylines. One week the gnomes were staging a tiny wedding. The next month it was a full courtroom scene, complete with one gnome up on a matchbox witness stand, eventually a full gnome heist, one of them dangling from a shoelace like he was rappelling into a bank vault. The neighbor completely lost it. Posted in the community group asking if anyone had seen anything, brought it up at 2 separate neighborhood meetings, and apparently even hired a consultant to help him install motion sensor cameras just for the gnomes. And every single time, this guy sits right there in the meetings nodding along like he has no idea what's going on. Meanwhile, he is the entire mystery. Now he says the guilt is eating at him, but so is the thrill, and he genuinely cannot decide whether to confess or keep the bit going forever. Ha, I'm sorry, but that is incredible. A whole secret gnome cinematic universe next door, and the guy has no idea. All right, story number 5. Story 5 is back in the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? And this one's got some travel drama. So this guy's on a long flight, a red-eye aisle seat, the kind he specifically pays extra for because of his knees. About 20 minutes before boarding finishes, a dad comes up the aisle with his wife and 2 little kids trailing behind and asks if he'd mind switching so the family can all sit together. Except the seat they're offering back is a middle seat, 3 rows further back, sandwiched between 2 strangers. He says no, politely, explains the extra legroom thing, and figures that's the end of it. Instead, the dad starts talking louder, saying things like, "Come on, man, they're just kids, don't be that guy," loud enough that people around them start turning around and staring. A flight attendant gets involved, quietly asks if he'd reconsider, and he still says no because it genuinely isn't his job to fix a seating mix-up that isn't his fault. Eventually, the family gets split up 2 rows apart instead. The dad spends half the flight shooting him dirty looks, and at some point during the flight, someone filmed part of the exchange and posted it online, except the caption made it look like he was the one being a jerk for absolutely no reason. No context about the knees. No context about the seat downgrade being a middle seat 3 rows back. Now the clip's getting passed around. Strangers are commenting on his outfit and his face like they know him. And his own sister saw it and texted him asking why he was being so cold to a poor family. He says he'd have happily switched into a similar seat, or even paid the difference for an upgrade for the dad if that's really what mattered. But nobody offered that. They just expected him to eat the downgrade because they didn't plan ahead. So is he the jerk for keeping the seat he paid for, or is the family the jerk for trying to guilt a stranger into fixing their own booking mistake in front of an entire plane? Man, the internet piling on with zero context is almost the wildest part of this whole story. All right, on to story number 6. Story 6 is from the subreddit called True Off My Chest, and this one actually made me a little emotional, not gonna lie. So for about 8 months, this person had a coworker who was clearly going through it. Late for meetings, eating lunch alone, just looked completely worn down every single day. Instead of saying anything directly, because they didn't know her well enough to pry, they started leaving a single sticky note on her monitor before she got in every morning. Nothing dramatic, just small stuff. You're doing better than you think, rough weeks don't last, that kind of thing. No name, no signature, nothing. They kept doing it for months, and slowly noticed her showing up a little earlier, staying a little later, actually smiling in the break room again. Eventually, she started saving the notes, taping them along the edge of her monitor like a little collage. And one day in a full team meeting, completely unprompted, she teared up and thanked whoever had been leaving them, said it genuinely got her through the worst stretch of her life, and that she'd just been offered a promotion she almost turned down out of pure burnout before the notes started. The person who'd actually been writing them just sat there in that meeting, said nothing, felt their stomach flip, and still hasn't told her it was them. Now, every time she brings it up, wondering out loud who it could have been, guessing at 3 or 4 different coworkers, none of them the right one, they just kind of laugh along and change the subject. They say the plan was never to take credit, and honestly they still don't want to, they just needed to tell somebody, because carrying around a secret that nice is somehow just as heavy as carrying around a bad one. Okay, that one got me. Genuinely sweet. Alright, story number 7. Story 7. Back to the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? And this one's a Thanksgiving disaster. So every year, this guy's mother-in-law brings the same green bean casserole to Thanksgiving. And every single year she makes a big production out of it being her own grandmother's secret recipe, passed down for 4 generations. Refuses to share it with anyone, gets almost offended if someone asks for the recipe card. This year, his 8-year-old daughter, completely innocently, picks up the empty can sitting right on the counter behind the casserole dish. Same green label, same brand, Same exact instructions printed on the back as the recipe Grandma supposedly guarded for decades. His daughter, being 8, just says it out loud at the table. Grandma, this is the same can as the one on the shelf at home. Doesn't even mean anything by it. But the table goes dead silent. Mother-in-law goes bright red, and he, trying to smooth it over, jokes that, hey, there's no shame in a good boxed recipe. Half the best cooks use shortcuts. Mother-in-law does not find this smoothing, storms off from the table, and his wife is furious at him for, in her words, humiliating her mother in front of the entire family instead of just letting the moment pass. His side is that he wasn't the one who brought it up, an 8-year-old was, and all he did was try to make it less awkward, not more. Wife's side is that he could have just laughed it off and moved on instead of adding commentary that basically confirmed the whole thing was fake in front of uncles, cousins, and grandkids who now bring it up at every holiday. So, is he the jerk for trying to diffuse an already awkward moment and accidentally making it worse? Or is his wife overreacting about a green bean casserole that was, by every account, definitely from a can? Ha, there's no shame in a good boxed recipe is sending me. All right, let's get into story number 8. Story 8 from the subreddit called True Off My Chest. And this one is deeply, deeply petty in the best way. So there's this pothole on this guy's street that the city has been aware of for over 2 years. Multiple complaints, multiple work orders, nothing ever happens. He blows a tire on it twice in one winter. So one night, completely on his own initiative, he goes out around 2 in the morning with a couple of bags of quick-set concrete, a bucket, and a shovel from his garage, and just fixes it himself. No permit, no permission, nothing. He expects that to be the end of it. Instead, the patch actually holds up incredibly well, better than some of the city's own repairs on the same road, and neighbors start noticing. A post goes up in the community group asking who fixed the pothole, half serious, half joking, that maybe the city finally did something right for once. Then someone points out the patch doesn't match the city's usual style at all, no reflective marking paint, wrong texture, and suddenly it becomes a whole mystery. The city, apparently, opens an actual internal inquiry. Because technically unauthorized repair work on a public road is a liability issue, and somebody in the neighborhood group starts a running theory thread, genuinely proposing everything from a secretive underground road crew to, and this is a real comment he screenshotted, aliens testing infrastructure materials on Earth. Someone even installed a cheap trail camera near the pothole, hoping to catch the culprit in the act again. Meanwhile, he just goes to the monthly neighborhood meetings, nods along with everyone else theorizing, occasionally throws out his own fake guess to steer suspicion away from himself, and has now quietly fixed 2 more potholes on nearby streets using the exact same method, partly out of civic duty, mostly because watching the theory spiral is the most entertained he's been in years. The alien theory is unreasonably funny to me. All right, on to story number 9. Story 9. Back in the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? And this one's a messy one. So this woman's best friend has been dating her boyfriend for about a year. And a few weeks ago, the friend accidentally left her phone unlocked on the poster's kitchen counter while she went to the bathroom, and a message popped up on the screen from the boyfriend's ex. Something clearly more than friendly, and clearly not the first message in that conversation given the thread underneath it. She didn't go digging. It was just sitting right there on the lock screen. She agonized over it for 2 days, then finally told her best friend what she saw, gently, privately, no big dramatic reveal, just a quiet conversation. Her friend's reaction was not what she expected. Instead of being upset with the boyfriend, she got furious at the poster, accused her of snooping through his phone, which didn't even happen, and said she was clearly just jealous and trying to stir up problems in a relationship that was going great before this. The boyfriend, when confronted, admitted the messages were real but insisted it was completely one-sided and he never responded with anything inappropriate, though he couldn't really explain why an ex would still be texting him regularly a year into a new relationship. Somehow within a week, it's the poster who's been quietly dropped from 2 group hangouts, while the couple posted an anniversary photo captioned stronger than ever. She says she keeps replaying it, wondering if she should have just said nothing and let her friend find out on her own eventually, or minded her own business entirely, because right now she's the one being treated like the villain for telling the truth. So, is she the jerk for saying something instead of staying quiet? Or is her friend the one refusing to see what's actually in front of her? Man, Shooting the messenger and then posting an anniversary photo a week later is wild behavior. All right, story number 10. Story 10, from the subreddit called True Off My Chest. And this confession made me laugh way harder than it probably should have. So 2 years ago, on an early date, this guy mentioned he'd studied French in college, which was true for exactly one semester, badly a decade ago. His date lit up, said she'd always wanted to properly learn, and somewhere in the excitement of a good first date, he let her believe he was basically fluent. One little exaggeration seemed harmless at the time. 2 years later, they're serious, moving in together, and she brings home genuinely incredible news. Her company is opening an office in Paris, and she's been offered the position to help launch it. She's thrilled, and immediately says the one thing that made his stomach drop: "This actually works out perfectly because you can help me with all the translating while I get settled." Since then, he has been secretly using language apps every single night after she falls asleep, watching French cartoons meant for actual toddlers, and once, when she asked him to quickly translate a lease document out loud, he panicked and pretended his phone was dying mid-sentence to buy himself time to type the paragraph into a translator app under the table. They fly out in 6 weeks to start apartment hunting in person, and she has already told her new coworkers that her boyfriend is basically fluent and can help translate during the office opening events. He says he loves her, he wants to go, and he is now stuck choosing between an increasingly elaborate 2-year lie and just telling her the truth, that beyond ordering a croissant, he genuinely does not know what he is doing. Ha ha ha, the fake dying phone mid-translation is such a specific kind of chaos. All right, on to story number 11. Story 11, back to the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? And this one's about money and friendship. Always a fun combination. So this woman owns a small rental unit, and about 3 years ago rented it out to a close friend from college at a rate noticeably below market, specifically to help her out while she was between jobs. That job situation never fully stabilized, but the landlord kept the rent frozen at the original below-market rate the entire time, quietly absorbing thousands of dollars a year in lost income compared to what she could actually charge, never once brought it up, never made her friend feel guilty about it. Recently, due to her own rising costs, property taxes, insurance, all of it, she finally raised the rent, still well under market value, just no longer quite so far under it. Her friend was upset, understandably, money's tight for her. But instead of just having a private conversation about it, she posted in their old college friend group chat, the one with about 15 people in it, calling the landlord greedy, saying some people forget where they came from once they have money. The landlord saw the messages, since she's still in that group chat, and just sat there stunned, because nobody in that chat knows she's been eating a financial loss on that unit for 3 years, specifically as a favor to this exact friend. She hasn't corrected the record publicly yet, partly because it feels petty to expose private financial details to defend herself, and partly because she's honestly hurt that her friend went for public shame instead of a private conversation first. Now half the group chat is quietly taking sides without knowing the full story. Someone's already dropped a solidarity gif, and she's stuck deciding whether to stay quiet and let people think what they want, or lay out 3 years of below-market rent statements to a group chat over a group chat drama that started over a relatively small increase. So, is she the jerk for finally raising the rent she'd been discounting for years, or is her friend the jerk for going public before ever asking the full story? Okay, some people forget where they came from while living in a below-market unit for 3 years is certainly a take. All right, story number 12. Story 12, from the subreddit called True Off My Chest, and this one is unexpectedly wholesome and unhinged at the same time. So there's a stray cat that's been hanging around this person's block for a couple of years. Orange, one torn ear, shows up most evenings for food and then wanders off again, clearly belongs to nobody, clearly doing just fine on his own. About a year ago, mostly as a joke to entertain themselves, this person made a lost cat flyer for him anyway, even though he was never actually lost, gave him a dramatic backstory, a fake name, Sir Reginald, and taped a few copies up around the neighborhood. People loved it. Not just noticed it, genuinely loved it. Someone started a whole thread in the community group speculating about Sir Reginald's origins. A few weeks later, a second flyer appeared, written like a small update. Sir Reginald has been spotted. He seems well, thank you all for your concern. Still slightly melancholy in tone. deliberately overwritten, then a third, styled like a tiny poem about his mysterious wandering nature. Someone started leaving small offerings by the flyers, at first cat treats, then eventually little handwritten notes back to Sir Reginald, and at one point an actual watercolor painting of an orange cat, unsigned, taped up next to the most recent flyer. The community group now has a pinned thread just for Sir Reginald sightings, complete with photo updates, and someone recently proposed an actual neighborhood cat shelter fund in his honor. This person has never told anyone that Sir Reginald was never lost even once, has a name they made up on the spot, and is just a neighborhood stray who now, because of one dumb joke a year ago, has more community engagement than the actual neighborhood watch page. Ha ha ha! A cat that was never lost accidentally starting a whole fan club is exactly the kind of chaos I'm here for. All right, on to story number 13. Story 13, back in the subreddit called Am I the Asshole? And this one is petty on a whole new level. So at this guy's office, birthdays get a cake in the break room. Standard stuff. Everyone signs a card. Cake sits out most of the day for anyone to grab a slice. A coworker's birthday cake goes out on a Friday, big message piped across the top in blue frosting with her name on it. That same morning, in a meeting with the department head present, this same coworker had presented an idea in a slide deck, word for word, that this guy had pitched to her privately 2 weeks earlier over coffee, never once mentioning where it actually came from, taking full credit while he sat right there in the room. He didn't say anything in the meeting, mostly out of shock, but by the time he walked past that cake with her name piped across it in blue frosting that afternoon, something in him just decided enough was enough, and he cut himself the largest slice in the history of office cake, easily a quarter of the entire thing, in full view of the break room, made unbroken eye contact with her the entire time he did it, and walked back to his desk without a word. Word apparently got around the office fast. People thought it was hilarious. A few coworkers started calling it the cake heard round the office, and someone even brought it up half-joking in the next team meeting. The coworker who took credit for his idea was, understandably, not amused, went to HR, and now there is, unbelievably, an actual documented complaint on file that includes the phrase excessive and hostile cake consumption. He says he has zero regrets about the cake itself, though he does admit HR getting formally involved over a slice of cake, however large, was not exactly the outcome he was picturing when he cut it. So, is he the jerk for a wildly oversized, deeply symbolic slice of cake, or is she the jerk for stealing credit for his idea in front of the department head and getting to keep the moral high ground anyway? Haha, excessive and hostile cake consumption needs to be engraved on something. All right, story number 14. Story 14, our final story of the day, from the subreddit called True Off My Chest, and this one might be my favorite twist of the whole video. So for about a year, this person has been in an increasingly petty, entirely one-sided prank war with their upstairs neighbor. It started with genuinely loud stomping at odd hours. They left a polite note asking if the neighbor could keep it down after 11, got no response, and the stomping continued, so they left a slightly less polite note. Then an even less polite one. Over months, this escalated into leaving deliberately annoying notes back, at one point even taping a printed diagram of quiet walking technique to the neighbor's door, fully expecting some kind of reaction or apology, or even an angry note back. Nothing. Ever. Not one single response. For an entire year, which honestly made this person even more committed to the bit, assuming the neighbor was just too stubborn or too embarrassed to reply. They kept leaving increasingly elaborate notes, at one point writing what they now admit was a genuinely unhinged fake noise complaint form, listing offenses like aggressive Tuesday footstep. A few weeks ago, doing laundry, they finally ran into the actual upstairs neighbor for the first time in the building lobby, a guy in his 20s who'd moved in 8 months ago and had absolutely no idea what any of this was about. Confused, they went back and actually checked the unit number on all their old notes for the first time, really looked at it, and realized they had been sliding every single note under the door of 4C for over a year, when they lived directly under 4D. The actual stomping neighbor, 4D, moved out 8 months ago, and a new, apparently very quiet, tenant lives there now. 4C, the door they had been contacting the entire time, belongs to an elderly widow who, it turns out, has kept every single note in a small shoebox and mentioned to a mutual neighbor that she found them oddly poetic, and had wondered for months who her mysterious pen pal downstairs was, since nobody else in the building ever really talks to her. This person says they still haven't figured out how to explain any of this to her without it sounding completely insane, and also, somehow, they are now more emotionally invested in this than they ever were in the actual noise complaint. An entire year-long prank war aimed at the wrong door, and the other person thought it was poetry the whole time. I cannot handle that. All right, you guys, that's all 14 stories for today. Hope you had fun hanging out and watching me build while we got into some certified chaos together. We'll be back tomorrow with another batch of stories, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like. Let me know in the comments which story was the wildest, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.